Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. What is going on, everybody? Wanted to do a little midweek pod and some stuff going on around football. We try to talk about the draft daily, and something I saw Ryan Poles is doing that I think is really impressive and smart. Obviously, the situation going on with Rashee Rice, the Kansas City wide receiver. Wanted to touch on that and how it really relates to the draft, this upcoming draft, and just the draft on a yearly basis. And then hit on a couple quick things that news and notes around the National Football League, as well as a little tangent Tuesday. I'm recording this on Tuesday, but because if you haven't had a chance, we had Mike Mayock on for about 45 minutes. That video's up on YouTube, obviously also out on the podcast if that's the way you consume. So go check that out. He was fantastic. Talked about his Raiders tenure, being the GM, working with Gruden, as well as the crop of top draft picks coming up, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, and even hit on a couple defensive players. So Mayock's a stud. Got a couple texts from buddies within the NFL that listen to it, and they love him. So we talked about the good and the bad with his Raider situation, but go check that out. And I went on with Colin on Easter Sunday. That was out earlier in the week again. So we do that every week. A lot of content right now. A lot of content out there. Pedal to the metal right now. You know, the draft is a little under a month away, so we will just be full steam ahead till that bad boy happens on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But before we dive into some football, obviously I got to touch on and tell you about my close friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. Go to your smartphone, go to your iPad, download the Gametime app. I've had multiple people text me, hey, thanks for the promo code, John, $20 off your first pair of tickets. I went to opening day for the Orioles. I went to opening day for the Dodgers. I went to opening day for the Mets, and it was cold. But if you want to go to a baseball game, an NBA playoff game, an NHL hockey playoff game, those are I've never been to one, but they're obviously always fantastic watching them on television. I'm not even a hockey guy. Concerts, comedy shows, you name it, Gametime has you covered. You can search by price point. You can search by, it gives you the view of the stadium where you would sit, and just buy a pair of tickets and use the promo code JOHN, JOHN, JOHN at checkout, save $20. Obviously, if you've been listening or watching this podcast, I know the guys that run the Chiefs pretty well. Andy and Veach and a lot of other guys in the organization. And I would say clearly, they're a current dynasty going on right now and the most well-run operation in the NFL. And it starts with Andy and the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, as well as Veach. But one thing Andy has always kind of hung his hat on over the years, and I would say Belichick, was kind of the opposite, though it's impossible to be an NFL head coach and not take some quote unquote flyers on guys, is, he's willing to look the other way when it comes to talent. And part of winning in professional sports is you don't have a choice. You have to do that, right? Now, ideally, when you do that, a guy matures and changes. But a huge part of this draft process, and we talk about it constantly on this show, I talked about it constantly when I was in the NFL, and we talked about it when I was in college football under Pat Hill at Fresno State, is character, is maturity. And it's not always black and white with a guy. Like, he's been arrested, he's a bad guy. He had a situation, he's an awful human being. Some's like, yeah, he's just a little immature. I don't, he's got some stuff to work on. He didn't always treat his teammates the best. And then you have to decipher, is this something that a young man at 19, 20, 21 years old can get better at, can grow inside your organizations? It's why the best organizations, when they take flyers on a guy with some question marks can get them on the straight and narrow inside their operation because of the character, because of the type players they already have, right? If the Ravens or the Chiefs or the 49ers draft a guy with some question marks, it's going to be hard for that guy to act like an idiot inside a meeting room, at practice. It's not going to be tolerated. It's why forever, now Belichick didn't do it often, but it was hard. You wouldn't last. They'll eat you alive. And for the most part, once you get a guy and the season starts in training camp, like it's really hard to not color within the lines as a player, even when you're young and quote unquote have some maturity. And I've said this forever. I think we as guys mature a little later, right? I can't imagine at 21, 22 years old. I'm very fortunate that cell phones and social media and all that stuff did not exist when I was in college. And I was not some star athlete. I was just a normal college kid. And anyone my age, probably in their mid 30s or older, probably would agree. Thank God, high school, college, this stuff did not exist. So times are a lot different. But the thing with the NFL, unlike college, is when the season ends, you have months of free time. You don't have to do anything with the team. Now, when you play for a team like the Chiefs, your season ends much later, right? In the middle of February. Then from about whenever the Super Bowl is over until whenever OTA start, you can do whatever the hell you want. That's not the case in college, right? You get, hell, if you're on a good team, you don't even get Christmas break. There's no Thanksgiving break. The only break you really get as a college player is spring break. Other than that, you are around your team, your coaching staff, your strength staff the majority of the year. I'm talking 365. The fall, the spring, the summer. Like you're not just going home for the summer and dicking around. You live in Athens, Georgia, at SC, at Austin, Texas, and you work out with the squad. Now you're not going to class or whatever, but 3, 4, 5 days a week, you are training hard. And in football, in college football now, top guys have money, but I think we talk about it probably a little too loosely about how much money's getting thrown around. Like quarterbacks have a lot of money. Some of the star players have money, but most of these guys aren't rolling in hundreds of thousands of dollars, let alone millions. So you see this Rashee Rice situation, which I know as much as you do. I saw the initial story, then I saw the TMZ video of the two cars racing, in the crash happening. Clearly, everyone left, right? Which any older person would be like, hey, bro, if that's your car, whether you were driving, whether you were not driving, and you just leave it, like this thing called car registration, a license plate, they're going to figure out who owns the fucking car. Now, the video, it's clear the guy was there. But to me, this speaks to, and this is the unquantifiable part of drafting, is like, yeah, guy might be immature. And I don't know that much about Rashee Rice off the field in college. Did a little digging, couldn't find anything too crazy. You just hope guys make good decisions. You just hope guys surround themselves with the right people. You just hope, and you can do all you possibly can, just like a parent. Think how much stuff my parents literally couldn't have been any better in terms of discipline, in terms of forcing me on the straight and narrow, being on my ass about who I was hanging out with, about going to school, about having good grades. Yet so much of my life was out of their control. They couldn't keep me around a leash as I got into high school at night with my friends, especially in college. Those decisions came on me. Just like anyone listening, those decisions were you. Now, you were molded and shaped by who taught you things growing up, life lessons, how to act, what's the difference between right and wrong, when to say no. But you ultimately have to do that. And I think this is the scariest time for NFL teams with their young roster because for months on end, these guys can do whatever the hell they want. And this situation, at least from what I've read, no one is seriously injured, thank God. But clearly he's going to get in trouble with the NFL. Like he's going to be suspended. How long? I don't know. We'll have to see how some of this plays out. But I always get very angry around this time of year, and it actually seems like it's been pretty tame so far with a lot of the draft picks. Is when the media gets very angry when stuff comes out about players. Like this is the business. Trying to decipher, is the guy's character, is the guy's wiring worth paying, investing in, and drafting? Because ultimately, these are not widgets. These are human beings. Talking to Mike Mayock yesterday, Henry Ruggs had never had an issue at Alabama. There's a famous go on YouTube, type in Nick Saban on Henry Ruggs. Ruggs had zero issues at Alabama, not one. He would have been a guy viewed, I wouldn't call him like elite character, but he definitely was not a character red flag. And yet, on his second year, he drove 500 miles an hour into a car, killed a young girl and her dog. He will never play in the NFL again. He's currently in jail. So these decisions, listen, I'm not a huge car guy. I've had an F-150, a Tahoe. I don't give a shit. I could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You're not going to see me with Ferraris and Corvettes. I don't care. I also think that those cars, I'm not a huge racing guy, but the overwhelming majority of humans shouldn't be driving cars that go 180 miles an hour. They can't handle it, right? You're not Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Denny Hamlin or Lewis Hamilton. Now, when you have the money, this is a free society. You can do whatever the fuck you want. But these situations happen. And he's very, very lucky that his car, whether he was driving in the passenger seat, I don't know, only he and the group he was with knows, did not result in a situation like Ruggs. Because at the snap of a finger, your life can change. You just screwed your team. There's no way. Your decisions in February, in March, in April, in the summer, because in the NFL, you get 40 to 50 days off in the summer once OTAs end till the start of training camp. That's on you to make the right decisions, to hang out with the right people. And this is why character is so highly discussed around the draft. We can flip on the top 20 players in this draft. They all can play. They all have a lot of talent. Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, the quarterbacks, pass rusher from Alabama. You go through it. All the top guys. A lot of talent. If they are wired the right way and focused, they will have success. The reason now, some specifically guys fail in the NFL. They don't have the physical attributes. They're not fast enough. If they're a quarterback, they have no pocket presence. If they're a DB, they don't have any instincts. Obviously, there are limitations at the highest level why guys do and don't succeed. But I think consistently, and here's the sad part, clearly this guy as the season went on, and Andy talked to me about him in the interview at the Combine, that he helped kind of change their offense as he came on toward the end of the season and throughout the playoffs. They are relying on him. The best team in the NFL is relying on this individual last year and moving forward. And now he let him down. He let him down in a big way because not only does he tarnish his own name, his own family's name, his own reputation, but he hurts his team. He hurts Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Andy Reid, Brett Veach. And this is, everyone gets up in arms historically about like, oh, this shouldn't be discussed. Bullshit. This stuff leading into the draft should always be discussed because this is what separates guys in the NFL. Are you getting in trouble? Are you not getting in trouble? Any human being, whether you're a good guy, bad guy, whatever, can get in trouble at any moment if you choose to make the bad decisions. If you put yourself in harm's way. My late 30s, I'm not staying out very late. I'm really more of a day drinker. But my dad used to say, just like any human being used to say, and still says to this day, bad things happen later at night. And I know this was, during the day. I just mean in general, like when you're out partying, when you're out drinking late at night. I'm more of a day drinker now, partly because I can't stay up that late. But you start talking 11, 12, 1 in the morning. That's when a lot of guys historically have been in fights. If you avoid those situations, it's those problems don't fall in your lap. Now, I'm not saying don't go out at night. I'm not saying don't have a good time. But this is These discussions over the next month leading into the draft about all these individuals will be a lot about their ability, will be a lot about their talent, how they fit the scheme, how they fit whatever play we're going to run or whatever defense, and what we ask our players to do at different positions. But a majority of it will be about the guy. And this is where the work of your scouts, of everyone that went through the program, of your team's connection to that program and inside the building, inside that campus, to truly get to know these guys. And even when you truly get to know these guys, you don't get to hold their hand. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, these guys can hold your hand basically all year long. It's not the case with the NFL. And part of it, like, this is a business. I don't even want to hold your hand. If I have to, then we probably have some issues already. So sad situation. And I think these are the type situations that get talked about in draft time. So we'll have to see how this continues to play out. The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here. And DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. North Carolina listeners, don't forget DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in your state. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code JOHN, J-O-H-N. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. I got to do somewhat of a 180 because the first year I was really hard on this guy. And I had heard really good things. Obviously, knowing the guys from Kansas City, everyone really liked Ryan Poles. Just high-level guy, had a front row seat and been a big part of everything the Chiefs did in their personnel department. But people just really liked him. And kind of, I always heard like humble, kind of low-key guy. And then his first introduction as the Bears GM, he said something that I was like, oh. He said, basically, we're going to take back the North. Then, within his first year, he's trading for Chase Claypool. I think if he could, he would walk back statement on the North and obviously the trade of Chase Claypool. Now, I give anyone a little bit of leeway early on a job. I don't care what you do. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have things you would like to take back. And as a GM in a very public job, we get to see all those mistakes and warts. There are things I'd like to take back that no one will ever know. Just like if you're listening, there are things when you started a company, when you first started working for somebody, when you first started dating someone, maybe your first marriage, a bad breakup, you would like to change. You don't get to do that. But for the most part, it's not public. Ryan Poles, the last, I would say, 12 to 18 months, has been one of the best GMs in the league. And every time I watch him talk, if you just watch him on McAfee, I went and watched his interview with the local press at the owners' meetings. You go, this guy's really, really impressive. And this is the guy, the way he communicates, the way he carries himself, is the guy that I had heard about with the Chiefs. And one thing he said at the owners' meetings, which I don't think a lot of teams do, and I think a lot of times in the NFL, scouts can feel like independent contractors. They're just out on the road collecting all this information. They're kind of part of the draft meetings, but ultimately they feel kind of irrelevant. The coach, the GM are going to do whatever they want to do. Thanks for collecting the information. We're paying you 150 grand. Keep on working, man. And you just feel like, and I know I used to feel like this. What am I even doing? Like, what's the point of all this? And Ryan Poles said that when they get back, I don't know if their draft meetings start this week or next week, they're going to split their scouting staff into teams and basically argue what they should do with the 9th pick. Some people are going to argue for offensive linemen. Some people are going to argue over wide receivers. Some people are going to argue over defensive players. And obviously trading back, they have a limited number of picks this year because of previous trades, is an option. But I do think empowering the people you work with is very, very important. Because to get the most out of anybody, like, money goes so far. Whether I pay you 50 grand, whether I pay you $5 million. if you don't feel like the work you're doing matters, you're not going to get the best out of that individual. And I don't think it's shocking that an offensive lineman who, let's face it, they're very team oriented. Harbaugh, Jim did at the owners' meetings, went on this long kind of diatribe of the importance of the offensive lineman, right? No other position is dependent on everybody else quite like them, and they get no credit. They really do. And if they fuck up, we all see it and crush them. But if they do well, no one really mentions them. It's like, yeah, they should have. And I think typically those guys, one, they've always made good coaches. But two, anyone who's ever met a college or an NFL offensive line, they're typically pretty smart guys. They're pretty well rounded guys. And I've always had the theory of they get yelled at the most. They're constantly getting yelled at by their coach more than I would say any other position, offensive and defensive lineman, but specifically offensive lineman. And they are also tasked with the job of protecting the highest paid guy and the most important guy in the quarterback. So, not shocking that Ryan Poles understands the importance of inclusion with the staff. Now, I'm not saying this exercise of including these guys is going to lead to a better draft pick, but I do think it's very important. And I think if you never would because these guys can't go on record, but just went around the NFL and talked to individual scouts on individual teams, a lot of them would say, yeah, I don't, I know my job is important. They need me to do what I'm doing, but sometimes I don't feel that important. And one thing specifically, like position coaches in the NFL, historic amount of money. A wide receiver coach in the NFL makes $700,000. Both coordinators making millions. D line, O line coaches make seven figures. Tight end coaches, I mean, random coaches are making $400,000 or $500,000. The pay scale for scouts is nowhere near that. I mean, there are a ton of scouts all over the NFL, especially the younger ones, making under $100,000. Yet their job is to accumulate this information on first and second and third round picks, but they're not compensated like coaches. And it's a huge thing that scouts talk about a lot, that they feel underpaid. Most industries, I mean, listen, most of my friends do not work at sports. I'm not exactly in the media crew. Work in the private sector. Have been making a lot of money for a long time because you start at a much higher rate. In scouts, you don't make anything to start with. And same thing with coaches, but even a quality control coach, the lowest guy on the totem pole, typically starts like $80,000, $90,000. That's not the case. So including people in your operation, to me, always leads to a healthier building, a place where people want to work. I stopped watching the Dynasty. I just think it kind of pisses me off, the treatment of Belichick. Now, they didn't really talk about this in the documentary, but I know it's true because I know a lot of people were. Belichick did not care what any of scouts thought. That's why a lot of scouts were pretty miserable there. Didn't pay well, and he did not give a crap what you thought. Now, there was a benefit to working for the Patriots over a 20-year span. You became a Super Bowl champion, and when you interviewed other places, I worked for Bill Belichick. I was a part of Super Bowl teams. I kind of have a piece of the secret sauce. I'm not talking coaches. I'm talking scouts. And a lot of them have gone on to other jobs and made a lot more money because of it. But he was not very inclusive at all. So props to Ryan Poles for getting that part of it. And I'm pretty excited to watch where the Bears are going. Let's hit a couple news and notes around the NFL. Undo the water bottle. The Chiefs signed Carson Wentz. They were interested in Carson Wentz last year. And I don't know if they were quote unquote scared off, but clearly Carson Wentz did not sign till the middle of the season. A lot of teams were not feeling the guy. There were a lot of perception had become reality. Hard to coach, not an easy guy to have around. Kind of played the victim mentality. I know the victim mentality plays on Twitter. Doesn't really play in a lot of high-level organizations. No one wants to hear you got screwed over. And I think Carson had to look in the mirror and take a huge, huge slice of humble pie. No one would mess with the guy until Sean McVay did. And sometimes you need a high level person to throw you a lifeline. And then the perception can change a little bit. And I think Sean McVay is a big part of this signing because not only did he sign him, nothing came out about Carson Wentz being weird throughout the season. And when he finally played in the game against the 49ers, let's be real, he didn't look that terrible. Now, the Niners were playing their backups, but still, he looked like a functional NFL player. If that Rams thing had not happened and he had been out of the NFL for a year, I don't think the Chiefs signed him. But it's easier for Andy and Veach to go, listen, if we're going to put a guy in a meeting room every single day with the guy carrying our organization, we can have no question marks here. It's why they were so comfortable with Chad Henne. The character really matters. It's why last year, who'd they sign? Blaine Gabbert. Well, he had just been the right-hand man for Tom Brady for years. So I know he can be a good backup in terms of just showing up every day, doing the work, and helping the starter out. That was a massive question with Carson Wentz. Well, last year he played that role because Stetson Bennett was nowhere to be found. And he was sitting right next to Matt Stafford, who was obviously having one of the best years of his career. So I think Sean McVay, anytime a quarterback finds themselves in the wilderness, you got to try to get with the right coach. Because look at Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was kind of a joke. A lot of people were like, this guy sucks. This guy's not an NFL quarterback. What are you doing? Gets with Kyle Shanahan. The moment Kyle Shanahan signed him, Trey Lance was done. He inevitably got traded a couple months later. And then a year later, after just a handful of snaps, Sam Darnold signs for $10 million to be the bridge quarterback from Minnesota. I don't know if that happens without the Kyle Shanahan situation. So you get with Kyle Shanahan, you get with Sean McVay, you get with Andy Reid. It can change the way the league views you. So interesting signing. Obviously didn't cost the Chiefs, I'm sure, very much. I have not seen the amount of money they paid him. I would imagine it's pretty cheap. But yeah. Haason Reddick. You know, it's funny. In the NFL, more than most sports, you can be a really good player. But as you age and your contract gets bigger, if I have a high priced team, I have to make tough decisions. I have to go, I don't know if this makes financial sense anymore, even if it's clear you're one of the best players on my team. Like, no one would argue that Reddick is not a really good player and is an impactful player for the Philadelphia Eagles, who every single year, especially these last couple and going into the season, their goal is to like compete for the NFC Championship. Not to just win the NFC East, to compete for the NFC Championship and be playing in the Super Bowl. And Reddick helps you do that. Now, you could say 2 years ago he was better. This year he chased some sacks, whatever. But your contract plays a big role. And the Eagles, once they signed Huff from the Jets, who's a younger player, and kind of betting on the come moving forward, Reddick was done. And this story played out even before free agency when they basically told him, like, listen, we're not extending your contract. We'll give you the right to sniff around, see what you can get. And they traded him for a 2026 third round pick. Now, that pick can go up to a 2024 or 26 second round pick. But clearly, it was like, you're not coming back to this team. And this is the hard part about the NFL. Like, it's not like Howie and Vic Fangio think this guy can't play. You just have to kind of build your puzzle, and it constantly changes based on other guys' cap hits, based on who you've drafted, based on who you sign. And I think the Jets, and I told Colin this a couple days ago, and this has been a theme with the Jets all off season, is they're all in this season like a 1990s New York Yankees, Cleveland Indians, some of the Houston Rockets team when they signed Charles Barkley and trade for Clyde Drexler. A lot of older guys, a lot of guys that if this works and everyone plays their potential, we should be pretty good. But if these guys get banged up, can't stay on the field, it could be a disaster. And I think the pressure involved with this team going into next year, because I said, I think Miami's worse. A Dolphins fan hit me and like, I know you think Christian Wilkins, but we signed all these other guys. I don't know. I'd rather have impact players than like five other starters, especially guys with some questions with injuries. But that's beside the point. The Bills lost a lot, but they still have Josh Allen, and the Patriots, I think, are going to blow. To me, the Jets are an all-time boom or bust. I'm betting on the bust. Just history would say. And one thing I told Colin, because we were talking about Favre when he moved to Minnesota, the Minnesota Viking team in 2009, when Favre had one of the best years of his career, he was almost 70% completion percentage. I think it was like 68.5. That team was fucking loaded. They had 10 Pro Bowlers, multiple defensive linemen, multiple offensive linemen. They had a young Adrian Peterson. Obviously, Favre was awesome. And they had three Hall of Famers. I mean, obviously Favre, but Adrian Peterson and Steve Hutchinson. They were just really, really good. I don't think this Jets team is remotely close to that talented. Now, they do have some young, talented players, but that New York market, I saw it in Philly, my second year when the quote unquote dream team. If it doesn't go well immediately, things can fracture. Why? Because there's not like this built up group of equity. One thing the Chiefs have had last year and even 2 years ago, remember when they went through that rough stretch when Mahomes wasn't playing that well? It's like all these guys have played together for a while. And you can lean on, like, we'll be all right. The Jets are kind of built this mercenary culture, which I don't blame them. They don't have a choice once they traded for Aaron Rodgers, but that's how it kind of feels. And typically that's not how it works in the NFL. So they're going to be one of the more fascinating teams this year. If it goes well, it'd be cool. I'm not against it going well. I'm just telling you where I sit right now. I'm going to bet against it. And Tangent Tuesday, which I usually do on Monday, but because of Mayock's podcast, we had to push this podcast back until recording it on Tuesday, come out on Wednesday. I got home from the gym today, and my neighbors, who are from Philadelphia, older couple, big Eagles fan, and she walked up to me. She's like, "Did you check out that women's?" She knows I'm a sports guy. Women's basketball game. How incredible was that? She's like, "I was just at the gym. Three people were talking about it." I was like, "Yeah, not in a million years." Well, I mean, in my lifetime, I have never, ever sat down to watch a college women's basketball game. I've never watched a dribble beside like on social media of the WNBA. And I would imagine a lot of people listening have not either. Again, this isn't to shit on them. It's just the ratings speak for themselves historically. Now, I think this is a unique occurrence. Like, I'm no dummy. When Otani's doing something crazy, it's like I'm watching every baseball game. I'm paying attention. You can't not pay attention to Caitlin Clark. I mean, she's scoring 40, hitting fadeaway threes. It was a cool moment. It really was. And not shocking to see high ratings, but also people are like, oh, it's so much more popular than the men's game. I just heard on the radio when I was driving back from the gym this morning that the men's games on Sunday did the highest rating since 2019. Now, part of that, I'm sure, is gambling. Part of that is Duke, who got their ass kicked. But 15 plus million people watched. I don't think sports is that complicated. The reason why a lot of people came in to check out Caitlin Clark is because she's gained a lot of fame, a lot of star power. Guess what we like? Star power, right? Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. I mean, when they play, as your star builds, more and more people pay attention. I think the NCAA tournament in the men's game has more to do with probably the gambling, clearly, and just the nature of the one and done, or not the one and done, but if you lose, you're out. So there's a lot of urgency there. But I can't lie. I thought that was a pretty cool night watching Caitlin Clark score all those points against the defending champs. I even stayed a little bit to watch the next game in UConn take down USC and the star player that USC has in Juju. But listen, it just shows you this stuff is it's not that hard to figure out. Now, she's clearly a generational player. I don't think there's ever been a player quite like her in the women's game. This isn't something like I wouldn't expect this to keep carrying over unless something like her happens again. And when they happen, like I understand golf is not for everybody. Like I'll be the first to admit, like when I do these golf podcasts, it's more of a passion project for me. I'm watching. I know the audience is much smaller, but we'd all agree that you could not say the words Tiger Woods to anybody and not have them know who he is. And they've known about him for 25 years. Football, a huge reason why it became infinitely more popular the last 20 plus years, was Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. I've always said they are the magic and bird of the sport of football. Took it to a whole nother level. When baseball came storming back in the late 90s in the steroid era, if it was just me, you, and three other random guys hitting 60 plus home runs, it wouldn't have been as big. It would have been a big story, but it went to a different level when it was Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds. Stars sell. They always have. They always will.